Today I am joined by composer and violinist Jessie Montgomery. Jessie's music has been commissioned by the New York Philharmonic, National Symphony, Sphinx Organization, and Metropolitan Museum of Art, just to name a few. And in September of this year, she became one of the first women and composers of color to be commissioned by the Metropolitan Opera. Jessie shares how she has essentially changed her creative process in reaction partially to the pandemic and the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and is really inviting more of a sense of creative play and joy into her work as well as improvisation. Hi, Jessie.
Hi, Julia.
How are you doing?
Uh, I'm doing okay. I'm doing pretty good, considering uh, everything. But yeah, doing okay. I woke up this morning and I started having I think this happens every time I have an upcoming deadline. I get those. Do you get those like pangs of like anxiety? It's like like jolts you out of bed. That I've had that the past couple of days.
I saw your name in the article about from the Met Opera yesterday, so that was really exciting. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it is very exciting. So myself, along with Joel Thompson and Valerie Coleman, are going to be the composers that are going to be part of their New Works program, New Works commissioning program that's between the Met and Lincoln Center, and they're going to help the three of us create basically workshop premieres of operas that we're working on. So it's exciting for us. I think it's exciting for the Met too, to have that happening, and especially like just among all the other programming and other union musician contract madness that's going on, and so it's a bright light.
So this is an opera you were already working on?
Yes, yeah. The opera idea that I've been working with recently is a personal personal sort of recounting of my great grandfather's life, he was a Buffalo soldier, and not very many people know the history of Buffalo soldiers. They were Black military men who during the Spanish American War, they fought a lot of the Native Americans, and so that's where they got the name Buffalo soldiers that were given. There's a few different kinds of lore around where the name came from, but so it's a fascinating, complex part of our history. The text and the sort of and the ideas and the guts of the material are going to come from my mom, who's a playwright, and also has told this story in her own way and other plays of hers.
So is this your first opera?
Yeah, technically yes.
So you're starting with the Met.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Keep the stakes really low,
Are you one of the first women to be commissioned?
Yes. Yeah. And
yeah,
Black composer, woman, everything. They have Missy's writing an opera for the Met. I think that's their first official commission by a woman. They're hiring three Black composers to write these pieces, and I think in my case, I'm certainly telling a story that is an African American story, but is also a universally American story, which is kind of what I'm getting at. It will include mostly Black cast, and I think I don't know what the others are planning to create, but there's a potential for that kind of participation. It'll sort of help kind of stir the pot a little bit more.
Yeah.
So it's good.
How does that feel like in the midst of this time period, to have such exciting news, and to have that kind of responsibility?
Yeah. It's big. I think for a lot of organizations and a lot of artists, hoping that this time is a time that's gonna sort of the work that's happening now is going to be generative, like for a long period of time, that sort of creates a stream that's long lasting. That's the hope. I'm not talking about just the Met. I'm talking about in any case, within schools, within any kinds of institutions that I'm involved in. It's like, it feels like a big responsibility, but it feels like a shared responsibility,
Sure.
So that's good. I mean, that's just have to keep reminding each other that that's what's happening.
Right. That you have colleagues and friends who are like Valerie Coleman.
Exactly. Yeah. And having them sort of work. Valerie said we're siblings, opera siblings. Yeah. So I said, okay, that sounds great.
I'd love to hear kind of how you've been doing these past 6 months, whatever you want to share. It's been a lot that's happened. And a lot that's happened for you. People know you and know your music, but you've also been getting a lot of, I would imagine, requests, new invitations. So I just love to hear what's going on.
Sure. Yeah. It's been, I mean, so, in the beginning, at the start of this whole mess, I had a family emergency and we were dealing with that while the pandemic was happening, and happy to say everyone's healthy and fine now, but it was dramatic, and dramatic does not begin to, it threw my whole life upside down, really, for a couple of months. So then there was like the getting out of that, which took another few months. Just realizing the magnitude of everything, and then and I've been, as we've talked, I've been watching your interviews, and I found a lot of comfort in them, and hearing about how you were managing your creative impulses, and like trying to reconnect with that in a different way. And I found that to be very inspiring and helpful, to realize that it was actually a thing that was happening, that was like physically happening to me. That that why wasn't I able to do what I want to do, and then going through that process, and then coming out in some way so that I could actually work. There's some benefits, right, to this weird time. For me creatively, I think that meant get sort of starting to get rid of external expectations that are imagined, in terms of not just in terms of how much I execute, or how well I execute my music or whatever, but also the style of my approach, and also the material itself. Starting fresh and trying to play more, and play around with stuff, and play around with my gear, and just write in a different way. I'm playing now. I play into Logic, and I just improvise more. I'm using more of my improvisation exercises to come up with material, and not feeling like I'm not being hard enough, I want it to feel fun in some way, and if that's how I have to do it, then that's how I'm going to do it. Because we have all these, we're trained that there's with so many rules, right? And then if you're not following them, you're not serious or something. So trying to get rid of that that's an ongoing process, basically. Now, and I'm just glad it's actually happening. And I think it's because of this time. Last year was really hard, deadlines wise, and managing my touring schedule and school, and because I'm also getting my PhD at Princeton right now. And so it was everything was crazy, and actually writing felt really burdensome. Right. The actual act of writing. Yeah. So learning to trying to sort of unlearn that it's been a really good opportunity to sort of unlearn that in a way.
So you're saying you've actually freed up your style, or just your approach to writing, or both?
I think both.
Okay.
Because there's some projects that I have that are not, that I wouldn't like hand over to an orchestra, for example. It's stuff that well, anyway, it's a project for a band that I have. So it'll be a combo of like written and improvised and kind of, multiple styles of influence.
What's the instrumentation of the band?
So it'll be 4 string players plus rhythm section. And the wind players, I'm trying to figure out exactly what the right balance is going to be. I mean, I think it's going to still have like an arty feel, for lack of a better.
Sure,
but, but maybe, I don't know. We'll see what comes out of it. It's sort of like there's certain elements about it that I like haven't discovered yet.
Do you usually write on the violin when you're composing?
Historically, yes. That's another thing I've changed recently. I've been mostly writing at the keyboard and or just scribbling stuff out in manuscript and then recording it. But I do a fair amount of writing on the violin, but I have found that like it can really influence, which I think is both good and bad. But it can influence like the style of what I'm doing musically, right? To it can sound very violin-y, and then I find I'm writing a lot of pieces with like open G strings all the time. Like everything I write, it's like based around G. I'm like, oops, so I've been stretching that out a little bit more and incorporating more writing just at the keyboard and thinking more harmonically. Like I know that going for like any kind of hunch that I might have had and been intimidated by, or like, oh, I don't know enough about that, so I'm not gonna do it. Like, which is like the worst thing you can do as a creator. So it's like the thing that I'm most drawn to is harmony, really. And so I've been working on that more, trying to name the chords, like actually theorize them, because instead of always just going by ear.
Can you explain a little more what you mean by there were certain, are you talking about techniques or that were intimidating?
Many times I've had the thought pattern that goes, here's this chord that I want to hear or play, but I don't know what it is. And that's terrible. Why don't I know what it is? I like suck, and then like throw everything off the table and like leave it alone and like go on to something else.
You're hearing harmonies that are like, are they crunchier or they're like more dissonant than what you would normally be able to theorize immediately?
Yeah, they're actually it's not even crunchy. I think it's more, it might be like based on more on like jazz harmony, and I only mean that in terms of like how the extensions are stacked.
Sure.
And there's a certain like order of extensions that I think I'm hearing that I just don't know where they are.
Do you think this is because you're hearing more jazz harmonic influences and you did not study those in school?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And I've also, I mean, we're talking about like, oh gosh, like tearing down like decolonizing classical music and all that stuff, and decolonizing our minds. I mean, literally that's what's happened. Like, I feel like there was a point where I was like, it's okay if you like jazz harmony. Like, it's great if you liked it. I keep doing that. Like, and whereas before I tell myself, well, I don't know. It's like, I want to go there. And also, but I realize it's also about an insecurity of not knowing something. And you feel like we're taught, I mean, we just like go through this thing where it's like, well, if I don't know it, then you get all like, well, defensive about not knowing stuff. So why would I prevent myself from, exploring a language that is attractive to me, and also part of my history in so many ways. So
yeah, I mean,
it's complicated.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you're talking about trying to like not be pigeonholed as, you know, a jazz composer that maybe won't then fit into the classical music world, but
Right.
also not feeling like you fit into the jazz world because that's not
right.
your background.
Yeah, that's not my training. Yeah, and I don't even feel comfortable using the word jazz as any identifier because it's not actually, it's sort of like, so it's like a big cloud right now in my, you know, it's more vaporous, you know, which is nice. I mean, I sort of like that because then it sort of keeps things flexible and I can play around. Again, it's like about being playful. I feel like we need to like feel free to be playful with things. Yeah.
Well, and also, like, why do you need to know why you like those chords or how those chords function? Like, is it enough that you just hear them?
Yeah.
Do you have to know why they work? Does that help you in your process?
I think there is an element of like re-theorizing like my own pieces. I don't know if do you ever do that? Like, I mean, no, yeah.
Don't think about theory.
Questions, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, just like there's something about that I find interesting.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's not. But I also am super aware that it actually it even just taking the time to do it takes me away from a different kind of process.
I would imagine it gives you certain power and control when you do really understand your harmonic language.
Yeah. And how do you think about harmony?
I think mostly about voice leading.
Gotcha.
So I think a lot about, you know, the upper voice and the lower voice and moving in contrary motion.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's usually just like a lot of, I guess it's bimodal. I don't think it's not tonally functional.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of my music is modal, and that maybe comes from my Jewish heritage, like this sort of cantorial.
Mm-hmm.
I was just never really mathematical or analytical in my thinking.
I think it's important for people to know those things because people think that there's certain things you have to know or have practiced, you know, religiously in order to be like valid in your creativity, or in order to like really like that there's something missing if you don't have a certain kind of practice. I didn't go to like composer school,
right?
You know, so
yeah, me neither. For undergrad, you mean, or
yeah,
or before?
And even my grad school was film scoring, which was not was not composer school technically either, but
still composing.
It's composing, but it was like I had this idea about, you know, anyway, but here I am. I mean, I'm at Princeton doing my work here, and it's also, this program is like so sort of free and experimental, and they encourage a lot of that here. So that's also teaching me that like this idea of studying composition is really just about creating a space of like free flowing creativity, you know, and discussion and like feedback.
There's no right way to do it.
Right or
wrong way. So how do you think you were able to connect to this more playful side during these past couple of months?
To be honest with you, I watched your one of your shows, and you were talking about your journaling, and I also like to journal a lot, and I as a kid, I think we talked about this the other day. You know, growing up only child, it's like you got to figure out ways to entertain yourself, and so I did it right. I always had a diary. I always had, you know, I have some from high school that are like pretty scary to look at. I'm amazed at how complex our brains are and how we get teenagers through stuff. Jesus. But you know, but it was a necessary tool as a kid, and then I realized, okay, this is maybe, this is a good time to revisit that. And I started, just like I would have, there was a couple weeks in the summer, where I just had like, I would schedule my days the way that they were scheduled during summer camp.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I would I get up early and stretch and go outside and take a breath of air, and then have breakfast, and then I do like some kind of, warm up activity, like draw or like listen to music or something simple. And then I would work for a few hours, and then have lunch, and then have rest time.
Yes.
Yeah. Quiet time. We used to call it quiet time. Yeah. Right. Quiet time for an hour or so, which was like napping or reading or sitting or just doing nothing. And then work again on whatever I wanted to work on in the evening, which could be more writing, or it could be playing a little bit, or it could be some kind of, and I sort of learned like at certain points of the day I can create, and other parts of the day are better for like receiving information, right? Yeah. So I'm better with receiving in the evening and creating during the daytime. So yeah, and so I just like, I would schedule my days like that, and then cook dinner and watch a movie and go sleep. And so, and then, that process was like super important. And so, and that was when I started to sort of have more time to think through my hang-ups and stuff like that I needed to like work through. And I was lucky also to have my dad around during this time, because he's a musician too, and a composer, and really like he plays the saxophone, and he had been practicing every day for 5 months. He practiced like the same 2 Charlie Parker solos that he was practicing every day for like hours. And I was like, how do you have that like much capacity and interest, and I'm over here like drudging away, like desperately, like procrastinating and whatever. So that was inspiring to see him doing that. And he has always been like my cheerleader. He would give me little advice like during the summer. He's like, why don't you just play it upside down and turn it backwards, like basic stuff that's like just all, just gets the wheels going and gets you active, right?
Sometimes you just need another voice to remind you of things you already know, even.
Yeah.
But just to sort of get you out of your own head.
100%.
I've also been thinking about summer camp.
Oh, yeah.
Like that. That was absolutely one of the things that I thought about early in the pandemic. Like, I miss summer camp.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. It's the best. Summer camp is the best. Right? And especially as a New York kid, right?
Yes.
Like the opportunity to get out of the city, and like it became such an important like ritual kind of like every summer.
I remember like being outside in the morning, being in nature in the morning, and that feeling of like, I get to make art today.
Yeah.
And when you're little, or 11, 12, 13, whatever, that being so exciting, and just like trying to reconnect with that feeling.
Exactly. I think we owe it to ourselves to like remember that, like to go there. We can do that. It's just, having the community around to do it with you.
When did it become less joyful and playful and more stressful, analytical?
For me, that was definitely college.
College, okay.
Undergrad, at Juilliard. Because, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I had a hard time. That was a hard one, because I actually had a lot of freedom in high school. I was still feeling pretty free and excited during that time. And also really like writing freely, Also, it was, and that was still just like, I started composing, I guess I was like 10 or 11 or something like that. So, but yeah, and then in college, I just like stopped writing. And then I had this like annoying thing happen at Juilliard where I tried to sign up for composition for non-majors. And I had two theory teachers that were encouraging me to do it, because we'd have these little assignments in our theory class, like write a courant or write a fugue or write a, whatever. And they, recognized that there was something there. So I went for it, but then I went in the fall, and the guy basically, I was also like a punky kid. I had dreadlocks and I had like big baggy pants, and I kind of had a little bit of an edge to me on the exterior. He said on the first day of class, he looked at the classroom and he said, okay, we're gonna have each of you, I'd like to meet with you individually and go over your work. And so I was, I think, one of the first people to meet with him. And I was excited, but I was a little nervous, because I was like, I wonder what we're gonna all be meeting, what our individual meetings are about. And anyway, essentially, he was like, so can I see what music you've been writing? And I said, I haven't written anything over the summer. So I was focusing on playing. I wasn't writing over the summer. Yeah. And I showed him my sketchbook, and he sort of like flipped through it and like was like, I don't think this class is for you. Why don't you try next year or something like that? And I was like, I was so confused and so shocked, and also like not really good at defending myself.
You're 19.
I was 19, yeah. And I also had this weird thing with authority. I was like very obedient around authority, even though I kind of had this weird edgy thing. It was a whole thing.
Sure.
But I just kind of took it. I felt like the guy just kind of wrote me off. And anyway, it didn't end up hurting me, except to recognize that, you really gotta, there's going to be moments where you have to stand up. You either stand up for yourself or you don't, or, and also moments where you're a little bit helpless, within these institutions and stuff. So, but Derek Vermel, he like plucked me from that situation and said, why don't you take Making Score? He was doing the program Making Score, which is now Young Composers, Lincoln Center Young Composers program. And and so I would go across the street to the ASCAP building and go to his class, and that got me back into writing again.
Now you're writing for the Met.
Right.
So screw you, whoever that teacher was.
Yeah, I know. I don't think he's with us anymore, to be honest with you. But he was pretty up there. But that's what I love that about composers too. And anyone who says they want to compose is like really, there's something already there, like, in terms of like wanting to discover something and be challenged, So
that's a really good point. It's rare for someone to say they want to write music and for that to be on a whim.
Yeah.
I feel like it should be taken seriously when someone says that, no matter what their experience is.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because it has to do with them wanting to connect with their creative impulses, which is like what we should be, we should be helping people do that. It's like a humanitarian thing. It's like almost, it's like you're realizing this person's like asking you to help guide them through like this thing. And
I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts about like this time period. I don't know, anything from like what you think might happen next or what you want to happen next.
I struggled a lot when the Black Lives Matter movement started really broke out, because I was not able to go to protests because of health concerns. And I was also sort of just like shutting down during that time in a way. Really felt like oddly, like weirdly confused and pressured, and alarmed by all of the things that were going on, like that were being posted on social media and all that. You know, the steady flow of that started to feel like it was happening, and I was so disconnected from it, you know. Right. And I had to really think about like taxing yourself, you know, when you're already sort of the subject of the upheaval, right. Taxing yourself further by, you know, is not healthy. But also I didn't feel like I was participating either. And it's not that, you know, it's that we have to, what is the best way for me to participate? And I sort of came to the conclusion that I looked at, you know, looked at what it is I'm applied, where am I actually like affiliated, what organizations am I affiliated with currently, and watching the discussions like within classical music actually shift was like, okay, there is an opportunity here that's being presented, and I have a voice, and that's been historically hard for me to like speak up. So I thought, you know, this is going to be a challenge enough as it is, like to be in these institutions and also be in a lot of the case the only representative or one of two, and feeling like not knowing, again, that's what I mean about not knowing where your support systems are necessarily until they like really like show up.
Yeah.
And I've, you know, and I did participate in several discussions where I was like, if I don't say anything, nobody's going to say anything. So I'm going to have to say something.
Yeah.
And that's my role. And I have to just be okay with that. And also, and know that work, be optimistic about how that work permeates through the organizations. Because a lot of the thing that we get is, well, they're not doing enough. They're only doing this much, and the organization is not, you know, a lot of sort of impatience, you know, with the process, which is understandable considering how urgent, you know, for our society, it is very urgent that we solve this racism thing, and that we all get in tune with it, and we realize we all want it to be done. But that's the thing, we have to remember, it's not done. It doesn't get done. Like, it's a thing, it's a process. Like, that's why they say practice anti-racism. You have to learn how to practice anti-racism. You have to look at the things that you do and say and think that are framed by, you know, a white supremacist attitude and history. You know, and like those things we were talking, like I was saying before, like, and why would I prevent myself from creating more harmonies in my music? That's ridiculous. Except for that, I've been trained at one point in my life to think that that was not valid, you know, or not worth exploring, or not as smart, or not as sophisticated, when it turns out jazz harmony is like actually way more sophisticated, because you're dealing with extensions upon extensions upon extensions. And then anyways, you know, I really had to focus in on like, where am I gonna apply myself, and how, and at what pace. And because I, you know, I have a sort of like diplomatic attitude when it comes to things, you know, and some people can deal with that, and some people get impatient with it and think it's like you know, it can look like, oh, that's not enough, you know. But I have to do it my way, you know. It's important to take the time to look at how the system is actually functioning, rather than like going in guns blazing, like, you know. I think it's important to look, you know, and to not, and I'm not saying to make like excuses for behaviors, but if you're going to change something and you're going to change somebody's mind, you have to go like from the inside, like that, you know. And it takes a lot, you know, it takes a lot of talking and a lot of discussion and a lot of explanation, you know.
And they have to be open to it.
People have to be open to it. And I have found that that's what's happening, is that people are more open. And I think what everyone has to realize, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, white privilege, white guilt, and all of this stuff, and whose responsibility it is. Um, but I also have to, recognize that the discomfort around talking about race is shared. It's a shared discomfort, no matter what color you are or anything. Yeah. I don't want to talk about it either. But like, in order for the conversation to evolve, like, everyone has to participate. It does involve some continued work. And I think what's important is for, white people or non-Black people to look at it and say, I recognize that you're putting in this work, and the point is that we can ease that off, as we go on. Let's ease that, let's work to ease that back, but we really do need to all be participating in this conversation together. So it's it's a big one.
Yeah. So how do you know? Well, first off, thank you for sharing all of that.
Sure.
And how do you know how to pace yourself with all of this?
I've started to notice certain physical cues in my body.
Okay.
I've just been starting to try to listen to my body a little more. I have, because I do have like anxious, like I was saying, waking up this morning with the like spinning thing up my front. It's like, I have cues that I'm just starting to pay attention to, and it has to do with like, how my back feels, how my neck, how my, organs are functioning, like how, just my general physical health has played a lot into it, actually, to knowing, I might be doing too much of this or too much of that, and I need to just pull back. I've pulled back on certain kinds of activities, and like letting, like, if I don't get the response that I want right away from someone, to actually wait and let whatever message might have gone out just be out for a minute and see if the other person catches on or something, rather than like trying to force a conversation over and over again. Like anything we're practicing, composition, we're practicing anti-racism, we're practicing health, it's like, as long as you return to it, that's what matters, right? So if you have to back off, it's okay, but you like know when and how, when you want to return and do return, Yeah, and I've been napping more. I follow this really great woman on Instagram. She has an Instagram page called the Nap Ministry.
I'm a big napper.
It's about napping as resistance, resistance to capitalism, and resistance, it's also like tends to be, she's a Black woman, so it tends to be like Black focused, but also, but it's again universal. Yeah, so that's been great. It's just, she has these little reminders on her thing, like, take a nap. You're not responsible for everyone's like frantic emails right now. Like, just rest your head for 25-30 minutes if you need to, and come back to it. Yeah, and I also just not, trying to let myself daydream if I need to, and try not to feel bad about that.
When you are writing, are you able to separate from some of these social pressures?
It's a lot like what we were talking about before, like just sort of cultivating like a place for play, and like the summer camp vibe and stuff. And like, as long as I'm doing that, the voices they kind of don't have any weight. I'm able to sort of let it pass,
So if listeners want to find you, hear your music, check you out, where should they go? You can go to my website, which is jessiemontgomery.com, Instagram, jmontgomerymusic, and I'm on Facebook too, but I've been trying to limit my Facebook use lately. So, yeah. Thank you for spending the time with me.
Of course. Anytime, Julia. This is great.
I'm so inspired by how Jessie has changed her process during this incredibly tumultuous period and has had the strength to really examine what it is that she wants and what it is that she loves about her craft and about herself, and has been able to share that with us. It's an incredible reminder that the creative process is an ongoing discovery that really can last your entire lifetime and change as the world around you changes. I think Jessie's advice to pace ourselves as we engage in these very complicated and difficult conversations surrounding race in this country, it's great advice. And to me, I think it's about understanding that these conversations will also be lasting for the rest of our lives, and that we need to be prepared to engage in them continually and practice rigorously. And so part of that practice is understanding when you do need to step away and take care of yourself. So thank you, Jessie, for joining me today, and thank you for listening.